redzone.com.
Hey everyone, tonight I'm going to be going solo on the Hawk Zone Rundown live post-game show. Ryan's battling a bit of the cold, so I'm going to be taking over tonight and kind of going through a venting process after tonight's, or today I should say, it's a tough loss to the LA Rams in a game that was winnable by Seattle, and I think we can all have a kind of a healing process after figuring out what really caused this team to have some issues tonight. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Well, I'm the best corner in the game. And it's right. What a run. Get off me.
DK.
What's up?
Hey, it's John Schneider with the Seattle Seahawks.
And Washington's got a win. Leon Washington to catch. Geno Smith and Jimbo. The Seahawks are going to hope to get a championship.
Every year, you're going to know, is it going to be
You've got
another
to look
9
for
and 8?
players who've got to finish something.
They have to fix the offensive
Part of his
line.
success and part of
Ambition of being the LOB
Want to hear? That's trading DK Metcalf.
Play him aggressive.
This is the Hawk Zone Rundown with Ryan and Bryce.
Well, everyone, welcome into the Hawk Zone Rundown. It's just Bryce tonight, and we're going to try and piece together through the comments and the listener views on what exactly went down today in Seattle. The Seahawks lose 26-20 in overtime to the LA Rams in a game I think most of us thought Seattle was in. They were capable of winning and inevitably ended up finding a way to lose. For me in this game, there was a couple things that drove me absolutely nuts, and one of them being the offensive line. The offensive line today I thought was absolutely horrible. And I think there needs to be a real discussion now over this bye week of how much blame do we lay at the feet of John Schneider. A lot of people want to give all the blame to John. I'm in the camp that I think John needs to eat a lot of this blame, and his scouting department as a whole, development of the players as a whole. It's been a rough decade of offensive line play in Seattle. And for me, I look at, going cheap before. You had defensive contracts you were paying to the LOB. You had Russell Wilson in the height of his career when his legs were phenomenal, and he could get you out of having a bad O-line with the ability to, escape and make some moves and do some different things with his feet to create and buy time. But with the quarterbacking situation we have now with Geno, we don't have that quarterback. And it's the chickens have kind of come home to roost. Like today, Anthony Bradford, they decided, hey, he's going to take the job. That's his job now. We're rolling with AB. He had 6 sacks, like accounting for 6 of the sacks of the 7 today were on Anthony Bradford. And he also had, I believe, committed 9 penalties in this game as well, whether it was false starting, holding, whatever you want to call it. It was definitely a rough game for Anthony Bradford, and I think just speaks more to the problem of Seattle's ability to scout and identify O-line talent. And I kind of don't know where they go. There's no mid-season solve to this team. You're not going to go, like, you could go and try and trade for Brandon Scherf out of the Jaguars, but he's a rental. And I don't see this team as a team that needs to go and acquire talent. They're not buyers. They're not that. If people think that this team is a buying team at the trade deadline, they're sadly mistaken. This team needs to sell. And there's some pieces you can sell, and I'm not saying sell on DK Metcalf. So if people are going to throw that, I think DK has proven his value, and some people may not see that, and they may think that he could be overpaid. But yes, JSN had a good game today once they figured out that he could run routes past 8 yards down the field, which was kind of a miracle. But you need DK and JSN next year, because Tyler Lockett is kind of the domino to fall here. He's the one that you got to figure out what he's doing next year, because he's not coming back on the contract he's making. And so, they better hope that DK can be healthy for this 49ers game in 2 weeks, because this offense needs him to be able to move the field in the sense of pulling defenses out of what they want to do and creating more space for a JSN. Whatever they did in the second half with JSN, keep that in the offense. Keep that rolling. Grubb should have that, all those plays marked down and saying, hey, we're keeping this going forward with whatever we did with JSN. And once DK comes back, you incorporate what DK does well into it, because that was the best game I've seen JSN play. And if you take out a couple of those holding penalties, he probably has almost 200 yards receiving today, if not more. I will get to the elephant in the room, which I think everyone will eventually, when they populate into these comments, will start, bringing up, which is Geno Smith and what Geno did today. But we'll get to that in a bit. I just kind of wanted to go through the box score here just a little bit so everyone has an idea of, kind of the games that the game was played within the game. But Matthew Stafford, 25 of 44, 298 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick, not great numbers, not, crazy Matthew Stafford numbers. Geno, 21 of 34, 363, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. The thing today, though, Kenneth Walker got involved in the offense. 25 carries, 83 yards. He averaged 3.3, so not a great yards per carry average, but at least he was involved. Charbonnet had 2 carries for 8 yards. Nothing to write home about. The receiving game for us, JSN, 13 targets, 7 catches, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns. Tyler Lockett, 3 catches, 63. Ken Walker got involved in the receiving game as well. 3 catches, 24. AJ Barner to me today showed more as a tight end. I think, as he's gotten more involved in the offense, you've seen more of his skill set come out, which he can catch. Yes, he had a couple drops, but overall, he can definitely be a factor, more so than I think a Pharaoh Brown or a Brady Russell in this offense going forward. And I think the more he gets used to the NFL and gets into an NFL body, the more you're going to see, I think, a tight end one on this team's potential come through. Ryan Grubb's not a big tight end user, and people thought he was because of Jack Westover at Washington last year. Jack Westover's real claim to fame were kind of 5-yard outs. That was basically it, and he wasn't really that big of a deal on that team. Cody White showed up, and I think there's a conversation to be had. Does Cody and White deserve more reps than Jake Bobo? Jake Bobo got targeted once today. Jake Bobo was invisible. Yeah, he makes some blocks in there. Cody White's about the same size, but he seems to get more involved in other aspects of this team. So I think there's questions that, we need to kind of look at with this team. Overall for this team, possession was pretty much even across the board. They each had the ball for about 32 minutes. Seattle ran 74 offensive plays to the Rams 68. We outgained them by about 70 yards. But the big thing that comes down for Seattle is turnovers. Turnovers killed us. We shot ourselves in the foot again. Matthew Stafford was a 56 completion guy today. And that's one thing I really want to talk about. This defense came back. This defense definitely kind of found itself a little bit. I won't say it's completely back to what it was at some of the better points this season playing against worse teams. But this defense has started, I think in this game, started to kind of find their footing again of how to play defense. Clearly, you could see they simplified some things. Kobe Bryant at safety, I think, is a huge upgrade over what we had early in the year with Rayshon Jenkins. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when Rayshon Jenkins comes back. Does he slot into the third safety role and play in some sub packages? Do they take Kobe out? I don't think you can after the way he's been playing. That hit that he laid there on that third down in overtime, or at the end of the fourth quarter there, like that gave me vibes of Earl and Cam Chancellor. That was something that they used to do all the time. I was worried he was going to get a penalty. I thought for sure, hey, they're going to throw for a hit on a defenseless receiver. It's overshadowed today, the defense's play, by how poorly the offense functioned today. For the majority of the game, they basically were good in the last 2 minutes of each half. That was basically the offense's best kind of showing. So yeah, it's going to be some soul searching, and I really think the question needs to be posed, and guys, jump in the questions, throw any comments, anything you're feeling in here, I'll get to them. It's going to be a way more open, viewer Q&A today than most times. But I think there needs to be a question this team needs to really look at and go, are we pushing for a playoff, or are we truly rebuilding? And I've been of the mantra since the 49ers lost, this team's in transition and building. I think that our team, the Seattle Seahawks, needs to kind of embrace that now. Like, you have now lost 5 of 6 and your last 4 home games. You are 0-3 in your division, or sorry, 0-2 in your division, with the potential of being 0-3 if you lose to the Cardinals. Or even if you lose to the Niners coming up. But it's not a good situation to be in for this team. And they've got to find a way to either dig out of it. But if we see them buying at the trade deadline and going and getting talent, then I think that's a John Schneider misjudgment of where this team really is. And I just look at it and I go, why? Why can't we accept, like, and I get this, and it's been funny because I've been listening to a bunch of different, Seahawk podcasters out there, and kind of the one thing I've kind of come home to about this whole situation is we've been very blessed in Seattle to be a very good franchise, won a Super Bowl, and that's become our expectation. Prior to that, our biggest accomplishment was making the 2005 Super Bowl with Matt Hasselbeck and Mike Holmgren and Sean Alexander. Other than that, we had been a good franchise, never great. Once the LOB came in and we started to get that taste, I think a lot of Seattle fans have gotten kind of the point that that's the expectation to always be there. And that's not something wrong to have, but you also have to have the reality of where your team truly is at. And we are not even close to being, in my opinion, a competitive playoff team. I think now, looking at this team, and the more I do evaluations of where we're at and how we're losing games, we're a 500 football team at best. And that's what it is. And like the last 2 years, we've been the same thing. Our ceiling has been 9-8. It hasn't been something above that where we've underachieved so much. You can see the glaring holes. Good football teams don't have the offensive line issues that we have. Our offensive line is that of a team that's like bottom 3, or should be statistically. We've overachieved in other areas to make up for that. So it's not all doom and gloom, guys. We're going to try and find some positives on tonight's show, but overall, I think we've got to really just kind of take a check step over these next 2 weeks, really look at where this team's at, where they're going forward, and start realigning our expectations of what this team truly is after, the last 6 games. So let's jump into some of the comments here and questions. So we got Michael here. Went to my 1 game a year with my wife and toddler. As someone who was on the fence about Geno, I must say I'm on team dump Geno. Okay, so Michael, strong comment coming in right off the bat. Love it, dude. You're not going to find a solution this year for Geno. I think what you're seeing is what Geno really is, which is he is a good quarterback. But he is a roller coaster quarterback, he'll have good moments, and he's got elite talent. Like, he has a top 10 arm in the NFL. Those throws he made to JSN to get us down the field there and tie the game, those are elite ball placement. Those are elite velocity throws. But what you got to wonder with Geno Smith is the decision making. Those 2 costly red zone INTs, the one INT he had early in the game is completely a JSN fault. JSN should never have body caught that. That should have been using his hands, and he would have caught it. Him catching it with his chest, bounced off his shoulder pads, defense made a good play. The last 2 and the 1-2 where he just threw it into the end zone aimlessly, and some people are saying, oh, he's trying to throw the JSN. You got to know when to give up on a play. The D line's right there on your right side. You're not going to get enough motion on that ball to get it into the end zone anywhere near your target. Just eat it. We take 3 points there or a field goal, we're in a different situation. And then the one to AJ Barner, again, it's a play action. Just the guy's in your face and your guy's not out in the flat. Don't even try and get it there. Just turf the ball at his feet. I was at the Husky game the other night and watched Will Rogers do that like 4 or 5 times on a similar play where you run your wide tight end across and he's supposed to shoot out into the flat and you get the end to come up and you dump it underneath. If it's not there, throw it in the dirt. Like, throw it at his feet, live for the next play. And those 2 interceptions right there took potentially minimum 3 points out of Seattle's, 6 points in total. We got 2 field goals on those. And, took, potentially 14 points off the board. So I have to say this is the worst game I've seen Geno play. And this has been my theme since the 49er game with Geno is Geno works for this team right now, what they are constructed to be right now. He, however, is not the answer for this team moving forward. He's not on the right age of being a quarterback for you at this point, and he doesn't have elite decision making. He has moments of it, but it is not a consistent. And to be an elite quarterback, you have to be consistent in everything you do. That's why guys didn't have the same physical traits were better overall. Tom Brady was not a physical freak. Tom Brady was consistent in the mental side of the game and making good decisions. Peyton Manning, you can go through a list of guys that had elite arm strength and stuff like that. Yeah, some of them did win Super Bowls that were great, or two, like John Elway and Brett Favre and guys like that. But the guys that won multiple Super Bowls generally, if they weren't being carried by a team to win them, usually had elite decision making. Tom Brady's the kind of the right home about that. Patrick Mahomes has good decision making. Even though he has elite ability, he also makes really good decisions with the football. Those are things for me when I look at Geno and I go, those are the things that make it hard for me to go, yeah, I'm prepared to give him another 4-year deal, because I don't see the consistent, like, his decision making is getting worse. It's not getting better. And that's the thing that worries me the most. Ian Victor could have taken Spencer Rattler, but they didn't for some reason. They had traded for Sam Howell at that point, Ian. They weren't gonna go and put more money into another quarterback. So that's why I honestly look at it and I go, they didn't go that route. And I don't know if they were in love with Spencer Rattler. Like, he's played a bit. He's had some good moments, but he's nothing to write home about. I don't think he's better than Sam Howell, so I'd rather stick with Sam Howell. Here's another one. In your opinion, which players would you sell to other teams? And Cody White needs to be elevated to the main roster. I agree about the Cody White. Players that I would sell to other teams or try and, teams are looking for a playoff push. Maybe a Jaron Reed if some team's looking for D-line depth. You're not going to sell any of your premium players. You're not selling off a Hall, a Mafe, Charles Cross, any of those guys. You're kind of in this weird thing. If someone comes to you and looking for depth pieces that, are guys you might be able to pull a mid-round pick back for or a later round pick, then maybe you do it. I just don't want to see Seattle go out and engage in trying to buy players. They don't need to at this point. They've made a couple of trades in Ernest Jones and Robertson Harris. I would just stay pat if I'm Seattle. You're not going to improve your team at the trade deadline at this point unless you're going to sell the farm, and there's no point to sell the farm if you're not a Super Bowl contending team. So that's kind of my take on that one there for you, Ian. What else do we got? Will. All right. I don't get people saying we need to move on from Geno immediately. In fact, he's able to do anything. The fact he's able to do anything behind the O-line shows how good he is. No excuses for a couple of his decisions. I agree, Will. The O-line is not helping this case at all. The O-line is god-awful. And what he's able to do behind that O-line to be somewhat effective is remarkable. You're 100% right. But the decision-making is what worries me and is what continues to be my biggest issue with Geno. Again, like I said, talent's good. He's got the ability to make certain throws. He can do certain things. But Geno, when the pressure's on and it's a big game, he seems to falter. And he seems to have issues with his decision-making. Especially those INTs, you cannot throw those balls at that point in the game. You need to be smarter than that. Give up on plays. I get he's trying to make something happen, but you have to be smarter, especially given that he's like a 10-plus year vet now. He needs to be smarter in those in that area. What do we got? Drew Sports here. The anemic red zone offense and miscues are losing us games. Nope, Drew, 100%. They definitely are. I don't look at this and go, it's all player based or it's all coaching based, but I'm not impressed with Ryan Grubb's short yardage decisions at all. Like, every time we get in third and less than two, third and two and less, I should say, he goes into this Brady Russell at a fullback, no receivers on the field. We're going to be big and strong and we're going to push. No, we're not. Like, we can't push anybody if it's without being third and short and them knowing we're going to run up the middle. So I'd like to see more creativity in those situations. Like, why are we taking all our receivers off the field? Why are you going and trying to play big man football when you don't have the guys to play big man football? It'll be very interesting for me to see how this all shapes up in this, what kind of meetings are being held, what kind of discussions are going to be had over these next couple of weeks here to see if they can correct some of these issues. What else do we got? Ian again. Loving the questions, guys, in the comments. They're great. Ian, I think it's time to have a discussion about Sam Howell and Geno. I think in the last 3 games of the season, we may see Sam, not a guarantee, but it can be a possibility. I'm kind of in agreement with you there, Ian. I think there's definitely a discussion to being had that, if they do not win, if they lose their next 2 versus the Niners and the Cardinals, that division is toast for them to win. They won't win the division, and I don't think they get in the playoffs without winning the division. And they will be in a giant. What do I want to say here? I'm not saying a giant, but they will be. They'll be in a giant flux situation at quarterback. What do? Do you continue on with Geno and let him play himself out because, he has been a good quarterback for you and he's earned that? Or do you turn to Sam Howell and go, because I feel like if you turn to Sam Howell at that point, you kind of putting the writing on the wall of what you're going to do in the offseason. You're going to come up with the, discussion point of, okay, we're moving on from Geno. He's not worth the $40 million he's due next year. We're going to go with Sam. We're going to bring in another veteran. We're going to draft somebody and kind of go through that whole situation. Because if you do that, that's kind of what you're saying to Geno is, look, you're not the answer for us. We're moving on. So I'm not against that plan. I just, it'll be interesting to see if that's what ends up happening if Seattle can't right this ship coming out of the bye week here. Ashraf, hey, nice to see you again, man. Way to jump in the chat. Geno don't like to use his legs, even if his lane is open. He likes to sit in the pocket and won't work good front, and it won't work because we have a bad front line. Simple as that. That is why Hawks can't beat the 49ers and the Rams since Russ left. Yeah, that's kind of the discussion. The O-line kind of has been basically an issue for the last decade because they got away with having a quarterback that was extremely mobile and in control behind the line of scrimmage and could make plays happen when the O-line fucked up. So realistically, it's going to be something that we're going to have to figure out. And I'm wondering if this is going to be a situation where John Schneider's going to get criticized in his scouting department and development department for the lack of offensive line talent. Like, just to give you guys a stat, the only O-line that Seattle's ever signed to a second contract since John Schneider's been here has been Justin Britt. Like, let that sink in. Justin Britt is the only guy they've given another contract to. They drafted Okun. They let Okun walk. They've done a whole bunch of that. J.R. Sweezy, they trade away Max Unger, and I get Max Unger was injury prone during his time, but he was still a better center than what you had as your plan, because your plan after Max Unger was traded away was to bring in Drew Nowak and Patrick Lewis. This team needs to figure out what they're going to do with the O-line, and it needs to be an aggressive plan. We had Rob Staten on here earlier this week, and it needs to be addressed aggressively, in the sense of you cannot just go, oh, we're going to get a veteran kind of here that's half decent. Like, you need to go out and get talent. You need to spend money on that. And that means you're going to have to cut contracts someplace else, but you need to address that. So here we go. Figuring out mediocrity. Expand on why Geno's decision-making is getting worse. Geno's decision-making is getting worse in the sense of if you watch Geno play, the more that this pressure has gotten to him, which again links to the O-line. So I'm not saying this is all on Geno. But when you're in those, if you look at Geno, when we've been in situations where it's a pressure moment, we need a conversion, he's come up with some. He has. But he has also had the situations, and they're more abundant later, I should say, recently, than they have been in his earlier 2 years of starting, where he tries to do too much, and with that makes a poor decision. That's what the decision making is. It's not necessarily the read I'm talking about, like, oh, he's making the wrong read on the field. It's the time and place to do certain things. Both of those situations today are throw the ball in the dirt and take the sack. They aren't trying to make a play here. That's not what those are. Those are, hey, the defense caught us. They put on a good disguise, whatever they were doing. I got to learn to just take it. And those are things at year 10 for Geno, or 10 plus, I should say. He should not be making those as much. He did it a couple of times in the 49er game. There were moments of that in the game against Buffalo where he threw the screen pass that he had two guys in front of him and he never should have thrown. And that's what's worrisome is Geno's pressing because the O-line is so bad. And yes, they were putting a lot on Geno's shoulders, but there are certain simple plays like that. Like you cannot have 2 turnovers in the red zone. Plain and simple. Those cannot happen if you're going to be a playoff caliber football team in a game you must have. You have to be smarter than that. Ian again, noticed that Christian Hayne was a health scratch today. I really question about this guy. Yeah, 100%. 100%, Ian. The fact that he went from being in a rotation to start to being a healthy scratch today screams that did they whiff on this pick? Did they make a, improper selection here? And, you'll have to see. We'll have to see. We'll have to see if this is going to be a situation where they're going to move him to left guard next offseason and try him out there. But yeah, it's not a good look on this department that you went from having a 3rd round pick rotating to, now being a healthy scratch. And then the guy that he lost the battle to goes out and has 6 sacks accounted for on him alone and 9 penalties in a game. Seattle had 12 penalties for, I think it was, let me pull this up here. Penalties, 12 for 95 yards. So Bradford alone took 3/4 of those penalties, and then he also contributed to over 90% of the sacks because the Seahawks gave up 7 sacks today. 6 of them were on him alone. That is not what you want from your right guard play. We got Bill in here. Hey, Bill. I would rather lose with Howell than watch Geno. Well, Bill, I'm not going to argue, man. You might get your wish sooner than later. Like, depending on what they decide to do, there could be a change even versus the Niners. They may sit down and decide to do that over the bye week. Like, this bye week has got a lot of soul searching going on for it. So it will be very interesting to see. I would like to see Howell get some reps. I would. I do like Geno. I think, Geno and what he's done in Seattle has been fantastic. But I do think there's, a point you have to start asking questions on whether or not Geno's the guy going forward. You can't have these decision-making issues like this in games like this. It's going to be really, really interesting to see what kind of transpires over this bye week. I'm very interested to hear what comes out of it and, how many guys. It'll be interesting to see like how they handle the bye week in itself. This is Mike McDonald's first time being a head coach handling a bye week with the team going through this amount of turmoil. MWMM, tough seeing Jarrell have such a rough start to his career being thrown in the fire due to injuries. Yeah, Mike Jarrell got eaten alive a little bit today. And again, this is where it comes back to Seattle's drafting and identifying of things. Like Jarrell needs time to develop. He was a Div 2 guy. So it'll be interesting to see. So it's hard. I like Jarrell. I think Jarrell could be an answer long term, but he needs to be developed. So hopefully he doesn't get his confidence shattered. Thank you for the comment there, Ashraf. Love it. Actually, Ryan popped in. I guess, he's feeling well enough to pop in, which is great. And he says, we were bullish on Spencer Rattler all offseason. He needs to draft a guy, start Sam next year, and sign a vet. Me and Ryan were talking about this today, guys, that honestly, that might be the plan next year. Like Geno may play himself out of his job. And, with, today, there's going to be a lot of, like, today you have to put the game on the O-line and Geno. The loss today wasn't on the defense. The defense, Woolen gave up the post ball at the end there. But we couldn't get a yard on 4th down and 1. Like, we could not get a yard on 4th down and 1. It is not a, good look on this team. So, guys, it's tough. It really is tough. I love this team. But it's tough to see them when they're shooting themselves in the foot this way, and they have talent. And it's going to be a long 2 weeks, I think, for a lot of Seahawks fans. So, but guys, I'm cutting this one, short tonight. I'm on my own. Just want to kind of get in here, get your guys' feel of what, you thought of the team and how they did today. We've got a couple other shows coming up, so I'll get to those right now. But before that, you guys make sure subscribe, like the channel, share it with your buddies that are also Hawks fans out there. The more we can get closer to 1,000 subscribers, the more things we can open up to you guys, the listeners and viewers, and things that will engage you guys more, to get more interaction with me and Ryan. And we'll be able to bring you guys some other cool stuff with that, like a membership deal that we're trying to work out right now when we get to 1,000 views. Outside of that, guys, down in the description of our show, buy us a coffee. There's super chats. Check out our Hawk Zone store, hawkzonerundown.com. We got some hats, t-shirts, stuff like that coming up. They're all out there just so you can have a look. And outside of that, guys, couple shows coming up. So tomorrow we'll have our live sub show or spinoff show. I should call it, with Mookie Alexander from Field Goals, the managing editor there. He's going to come on and we're going to kind of dive more into this game. It'll be me and Mookie. Ryan's going on a bit of a sabbatical here for a bit. So he'll be back at the end of the week, but we'll be talking everything Hawks tomorrow. So kind of get a pulse of Mookie's, thoughts on the game, where he sees the team going after 2 weeks, have some really in-depth discussion. So it'll be a live show, guys. So set those notifications. We'll be on at 6:30 tomorrow for that. And then, guys, kind of a surprise thing that we're doing, but November 9th, 2 o'clock Pacific time, on our YouTube channel, we are doing a massive roundtable this coming Saturday on November 9th, with Dan Viennes of Seahawks Forever will be joining us, Brandon Kane from the Hawks Nest, and Jackson Bevins from Cigar Thoughts, and then Ryan and myself. And we are going to be having a mid-season, bi-week roundtable discussion of the Hawks, where they're going, what's going to happen with this team, how do we address some of these concerns, how do we get going in the right direction again. Kind of get everyone's vibe on that. It'll be a live show that will be streamed. So, guys, again, jump into the comments, bring your questions. There'll be a whole bunch of guys there to answer it for you. So, hope to see everybody in there. And other than that, guys, have a good night. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Go Hawks.